More prominent American politicians and officials have arrived in Taiwan to the chagrin of China. And as Asia correspondent Brett O'Halloran reports, the visits may undermine efforts to improve strained US-China relations.
California Democrat Ro Khanna and 3 fellow congressmen have started a 5-day Taiwan visit. The bipartisan delegation is set to speak with the Taiwanese president as well as microchip makers after the US recently implemented more measures to stymie China's chip-making industry and shore up semiconductor supplies. The group's visit follows the arrival of Michael Chase, the head of the Pentagon's China department, who ignored Beijing's demands to stay away.
We firmly oppose to official interactions and military ties between the United States and Taiwan. This position has always been consistent and clear.
These visits further strain US-China ties, already significantly damaged by the suspected spy balloon saga. And they come as Taiwanese authorities process pieces of what they believe was a Chinese surveillance craft downed over Taiwan's airspace. Around 40 US lawmakers visited Taiwan last year, and even more are expected in 2023. Taiwan is expecting so many visits from foreign politicians, it's considering opening a new government department just to cater for them. House Foreign Affairs Chairman Michael McCall is expected in April, while House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has reportedly pushed back his planned visit. His predecessor's trip triggered a dramatic escalation of Chinese military activity around Taiwan, the self-ruled territory Beijing claims as its own. While this visit may help calm cross-strait tensions, officials from Shanghai have arrived after accepting an invitation to attend Taipei's Lantern Festival. It's the first cultural exchange in 3 years, though pro-independence groups are wary of the visitors' intentions.
We want them to be clearly aware that they have arrived in a country that's separate from the People's Republic of China. Our country is called Taiwan.
The pace was brisk as the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken headed off for private talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. The meeting arranged on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. It was the first top-level meeting between the two superpowers since the US shot down what it says was a Chinese spy balloon.
Whoa!
The incident triggered a major rift, with Mr. Blinken cancelling a planned trip to Beijing.
Mr. Secretary, how did the meeting go?
The talks lasted just over an hour.
China sent a surveillance balloon over our territory, violating our sovereignty, violating international law. And I told him quite simply that that was unacceptable and can never happen again.
China maintains it was just a civilian balloon that blew off course.
Regrettably, the US disregarded those facts, deployed advanced fighter jets and shot down a balloon with missiles. It was absurd and hysterical, a total abuse of force and a violation of international conventions.
The US had another stern warning for China not to support Russia in its war in Ukraine.
We are very concerned that China is considering providing lethal support to Russia in its aggression against Ukraine. And I made clear that that would have serious consequences.
Then Ukraine.
Ukraine has been the main focus at this conference, with calls to maintain unity against Moscow.
Because there will be a future one day where we have to sit down again and say, how can countries small and big be safe and secure in Europe?
A key question, especially for those living close to the conflict. Jenny Lavelle, ABC News.
Presumptuous of me to say this, but I thought it was important that the President of the United States be here the day the attack began. Because as the President remember, I was warning the world that he was going to attack. I was certain of it. And I thought it was critical that there would not be any doubt, none whatsoever, about U.S. support for Ukraine in their war against the brutal attack by Russia. It's good to be back in Kyiv. And for all the disagreement we have in our Congress on some issues, there is a significant agreement on support for Ukraine. Because this is so much larger than just Ukraine. It's about freedom and democracy in Europe. It's about freedom and democracy writ large. And all the American people, I know that So many have kept Ukrainian people, particularly women and children, in their prayers. See what's happened. They can't fathom the idea of the shelling at night and the shelling of everything from orphanages to schools to the like. It's barbaric. And I'm here to show our unwavering support for the nation's independence, their sovereignty, and territorial integrity. And today, I hope we're going to have a chance to discuss how the United States and our allies, by keeping constant contact with and our partners, can most effectively support you and your cause, Mr. President. And I look forward to discussing all of this and then addressing the world with you afterwards. But again, the admiration for the people of Ukraine, ordinary, hardworking citizens who were never trained to be military. The way they stepped up is just it's beyond the road, and the whole world is looking. The whole world.
On Monday, a large white balloon was spotted just to the east of Honolulu in Hawaii. At present, there have been reports via Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System or ACARS of several commercial flights flying over the region of a large white balloon located approximately 500 miles to the east of Honolulu. The altitude of this balloon is estimated to be between 40,000 and 50,000 feet. It comes just days after US officials claimed that a previously downed Chinese spy balloon that was targeting the state of Hawaii was blown off course. However, there is currently no confirmation of these claims from air traffic control or other US officials. According to multiple pilots, they had sighted the object. Some posts on social media report how a large white balloon was spotted by pilots at an altitude of around 50,000 feet. However, air traffic control and other US officials have not yet confirmed such reports, with the identity of the object and the potential threat it poses to the public unknown. Fox News shared a picture circulating on the internet depicting a pilot in the cockpit holding a note. The news platform said, and I quote, "Report of large white balloon in the vicinity of 2639 North, 15021 West. Estimated to be between FL 400 and FL 500. Precise altitude unknown. Advise ATC if an object is seen," it said. According to reports, it is currently unclear who the object belongs to or the level of risk it presents to the public. Oakland Oceanic Air Traffic Control Center confirmed the existence of the flying object, which reported how the balloon was about 600 miles northeast of Honolulu over the Pacific Ocean. The US military shot down several balloons earlier this month, including what was believed to be a Chinese spy balloon on February 4th off the coast of South Carolina.
You know, Gordon Wang, the foreign minister, he rebuffed Blinken and he ridiculed Washington. How would you characterize the Chinese stance?
The Chinese stance is unrelenting hostility. And whether we're talking about a spy balloon or anything else, this is China's stance. It does this almost every single day with hostility in its propaganda. And we Americans are not paying attention to this. In May 2019, they even declared a quote unquote people's war on us. And we decided it wasn't really a big deal. So really what we've got to do is understand what the Chinese say and listen to what they say, because as James Lilly, an American ambassador to Beijing, said, the Chinese always telegraph their punches. They're doing this, Eric, to establish a justification to strike America.
To strike America, not just potentially Taiwan?
Yes. I mean, clearly what we saw was a balloon that went over our most sensitive military sites. This was Maelstrom, F.E. Warren, Minot, Offutt, and Whiteman Air Force bases, where we have our nuclear deterrent. Matter of fact, Offutt Air Force Base is the home of U.S. Strategic Command, which controls all nuclear weapons. So the conclusion must be that they are planning a first or second strike on the United States with their most destructive weapons.
You know, Gordon, that seems very alarming when you talk about a first strike with nuclear weapons from China. First of all, why would they do that? Second of all, how can we prevent that?
Well, they threaten to do that because they don't want us to intervene if they attack Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, or whatever. They saw that Vladimir Putin's nuke threats have been working in Ukraine because we have been hesitant to support the endangered republic there. And so has NATO. So they can see it worked. And after that, we heard nuke threats from both China and North Korea. So I think that they do intend to make those threats to use their nuclear weapons before or shortly after invading.
And speaking of Ukraine, Beijing apparently may start supplying lethal aid to Vladimir Putin for this horrendous invasion and the catastrophe that he has caused. What will that do and how will that ramp up the tensions if Beijing does jump in?
Well, Beijing has already jumped in. From the very beginning of this war, China's been supplying military assistance. There was the location data that China obtained because Ukraine was using Chinese-made drones. They fed that to the Russians so the Russians could take out the Ukrainian drone operators. There's this report that DJI, the Chinese drone maker, has supplied drones to the Wagner Group of Russia, which is involved in the war. China's been involved in helping Russia across the board, whether we're talking about elevated commodity purchases to support and essentially finance the Russian war effort, or we're talking about diplomatic or propaganda support. And this administration keeps on issuing warnings to China, and China keeps ignoring them. So, of course, the Chinese are going to continue to supply military assistance. We need to stop issuing hollow warnings and imposing costs on China for clearly being on Russia's side in the Ukraine war.
What type of price do you think that they should pay? What should we start doing? We just heard Nikki Haley in a soundbite a moment ago say that we need to be more aggressive in dealing with China. What would you suggest?
I suggest cutting relations across the board. Our response, and there's a menu of stuff we can do, whether it's trade, investment, technical assistance, cooperation agreements that we have with China. We should just start cutting this, and it should be disproportionate. American policymakers for decades have loved the idea of proportionate responses because they think, well, that avoids escalation. But, you know, those policies have not worked. And we need to impress upon the Chinese that we're serious in defending our allies, our friends, and the United States, because so far the Chinese don't think we're going to protect ourselves.
Yeah, and finally, Gordon, I mean, clearly the Chinese lie. I mean, Beijing is just full of it. Look at what the spokesman for the government has tweeted out about Ukraine. Quote, China is not a party to the Ukraine crisis, but we have not sat idly by or added fuel to the fire. Everything China has done is aimed at facilitating peace through dialogue. Going on to say, for a safer world, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries must be respected. The principle of sovereignty is the cornerstone of the contemporary international order. Talk about two-faced. Sovereignty when they send balloons over us?
There's no question about it. And China obviously doesn't want Ukraine to protect its own sovereignty. You know, China actually green-lighted the Ukraine invasion, and that's evident from the 5,300-word joint statement that China and Russia issued on February 4th, just 20 days before Russia's invasion. That's when China and Russia declared their no-limits partnership. And the Biden administration sees all that China is doing to support Russia and doesn't do anything. So, yes, the Chinese will continue to be on the other side, and they'll be there until we impose whatever cost. I'd love to cut trade. I'd love to cut investment. I'd love to cut technical cooperation. I'd love to close their 4 consulates in the U.S. We just need to cut back and show China that we're serious.
Stone Institute senior fellow, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, Gordon Chang. Gordon, good morning to you. I'll get to the spy flight in a second, but I really want to start with this.
China is one of the world's last countries to return to something like a pre-COVID way of life. And one sign things are shifting is the hundreds of job fairs, like this one in Beijing, many set to take place this month. It's a welcome sight for China's leaders after the economy saw its weakest performance in half a century last year, and bruising youth unemployment neared a peak of 20%. Job fairs are an efficient way for employers to reach out in China, where 1.4 billion people live. But some attendees at the fair weren't brimming with confidence about what's on offer. This 24-year-old, who was looking for a job in a hotel or property management, said he only hopes for a stable job and not high pay. One recruitment manager at the fair said competition for jobs was tough.
We haven't met any job seekers who are demanding a lot in salary. Our main focus here today is to find those living nearby for some of the positions. We'll also try to match those who live nearby with some positions. There are a lot of people who are out of work due to the epidemic.
Employment anxiety is also widespread. A survey of about 50,000 white-collar workers published on Thursday by Zhaopin, one of China's biggest recruitment firms, showed more than 47% of them were worried they may lose their jobs this year. Those working in consumer-facing jobs had higher job confidence than those in manufacturing, which has been hit by a sputtering demand for what China makes overseas and a property market slump. After a disappointing report card last year, the outlook for China's economy in the year ahead isn't much better, with the pain from stringent COVID rules lingering. Policymakers are expected to only aim for growth of about 5%, still below the blistering pre-pandemic pace China once enjoyed.
I want to go back to your readout with your Chinese counterpart. The other thing you said in there is you reemphasized the issue that we don't want to have a Cold War with China. But what else do you describe our relationship with them? We're expanding our military presence in Guam. We're expanding our military presence in the Philippines. We're expanding our military presence in Australia. We're helping Japan essentially change its national security posture. We continue to arm Taiwan and send weapons there. If it's not a Cold War, what is it?
Chuck, this is obviously among the most consequential but also complex relationships that we have, and probably the same can be said for many other countries around the world. And of course, we're in a vigorous competition with China, and that's something we're not at all shy about. We intend to compete very vigorously, and we've taken important steps over the last couple of years to invest in ourselves so that we compete effectively, but also to align with allies and partners around the world so that we have a shared approach to some of the challenges that China poses. And as we're doing that, we have a strong interest in trying to manage the relationship responsibly and to make sure, to the best of our ability, that competition doesn't veer into conflict or into Cold War. I don't think that's in our interest. And also, it's important to note that there are some very big issues out there that are affecting all of our citizens and affecting people around the world, where, if we can, it would be in our interest to find ways to cooperate on climate, on global health, on the macroeconomic situation around the world. And we have a responsibility to at least try to do that. So that's why I say you can't reduce this to a bumper sticker or to a label. It's complicated, it's consequential, and we need to manage it responsibly.
The Ukrainian Association in South Africa certainly views this as South Africa taking a stance in supporting the war. The Ukrainian people in South Africa believe that this move to do this exercise with Russia means that South Africa has not taken a neutral position anymore. But the South African Minister of Defense says this is just standard procedure. The South African military has done these kind of exercises with many other countries before. They are kind of pretending that it's nothing, that, you know, it's not related to the war at all, and that they are not going to have their military exercises interrupted by people's opinions. However, South Africans are very opposed to these exercises, and the exercises are actually happening in secrecy, as the military does not inform the media at all about what's happening, probably for security reasons. And protests have been planned around the country against these exercises. And today, some people in Cape Town protested in front of the Russian consulate to show their their distrust of the South African relationship with Russia. It really seems that South Africa is on Russia's side. And remember last year, this time, just shortly after Russia invaded the Ukraine,